Hello ladies and gentlemen, in this presentation I will be discussing the differences between the American and Chinese culture and ways we can facilitate our students into each culture to strengthen our connections and create better cooperation.
During the summer of 2019, we were lucky enough to go on a trip to Beijing, Hangzhou, and Shanghai, China. But before we got to go, we had to ask ourselves one question. We wondered how this program and other exchange programs like it can benefit the students involved. We figured that the benefits here would be the future cooperation and opportunities that result from the facilitation into another culture. In other words, the experience gained on this trip will help us break down language and culture barriers later in life, opening up new paths in things like education. We can now talk about what we experienced on this trip, and why we are saying that this immersion trip can help with facilitation because of what it gives us.
As I studied in China, I found out that China's art was a lot more involved in calligraphy and self-created imagery. In contrast, modern American art is much more involved in music, specifically the rap culture, and digitally created pictures and paintings. And this is only because our country is a lot more involved in the internet. There is also a huge difference in the two cultures' diet and eating styles. I found that the Chinese focus on a lot more vegetables and seafoods, and the American diet contains a lot more dairy products, as well as starch and carb-based foods, for example, potatoes, bread, milk, or cheese, which also creates the basic stereotypical American home meal. Moving on from that subject, now I will discuss ways to better facilitate connections and cooperations between these two countries. The first way would be through immersion language programs, just like LINCS summer program for Delaware students. This summer program allowed us to become more immersed into the student and learning lifestyles in China. These kinds of broad immersion programs would also benefit the students of China, and because of this, both countries' future people could better collaborate with each other, and we would now understand each other more. The Center for Advanced Research on Language Acquisition had done a study showing that people who were bilingual had better cognitive development than people who were monolingual. Quote, "There's a well-established positive relationship between basic thinking skills and being a fully proficient bilingual. Fully proficient bilinguals outperform monolinguals in the areas of divergent thinking, pattern recognition, and problem solving." End quote. The second way of forming better connections is through the destruction of cultural biases and stereotypes. These cultural stereotypes and biases can cause the incapability in cooperation, the lack of understanding, divide between people, the deconstruction of possible connections, pre-assumptions that may cause conflict, and confusion between fact and fiction. This part also partially relates to the previous page. There's also a bit more social justice than I normally would like, but it is a big part in creating connections and cooperation between Chinese and American students. While I conducted an interview on my people that I knew in Delaware, I had chosen the people that I had known that had never gone out of the country. I asked them what would be keeping them from visiting China or other countries, and most of the reasons were ridiculous and based on presumptions formed by false facts. Having been able to visit China for a month, I, as well as others, were able to recognize the truths and the lies and the information that we already knew about the country. The program allows for American and Chinese students to recognize each country in a more down-to-earth manner than rather some faraway place that we don't care about. In this respect, we'd be able to better form connections as we culturally understand each other in a more appropriate manner.
What was just mentioned shows what we gained from this trip and what the immersion into another culture is like, but we also interviewed a chaperone who went with us on this trip. In one part of their interview, they said the following.
How does this program have benefited students? Well, in addition to improving language skills, students in the program have developed independence and confidence in their experiences by being away from home. They have participated in seminars and field experiences that have allowed for deeper understanding of the culture, history, philosophy, and clean energy solutions for environmental problems. Several students have actually returned to China to advance their studies by attending university programs. In general, all students are able to strengthen their resumes with the experience of studying abroad and positioning themselves in a global market for future opportunities.
What they said here further shows the benefit that this immersion program has had.
Thank you for taking this time to view our work, and this concludes our slideshow presentation.